Have you ever looked at the clock at exactly the same time more than once? Maybe you keep seeing 11:11, and after a while, you start wondering why. Then you notice 11 on a receipt. A few days later, the same number appears somewhere else, and suddenly it feels like this number is following you. At first, you may laugh it off. You tell yourself that numbers are everywhere, so there's probably nothing unusual about it. But when the same number appears again and again, it becomes difficult not to notice. Your eyes seem to find it almost without trying. This is where things get interesting. A number that once meant absolutely nothing can suddenly become something you notice almost every day. You might see it when you check your phone, when you look at the clock, or when you are simply going through your normal daily routine. Maybe it appears on a house number while you are walking down the street, and you suddenly stop because that same number catches your attention again. Later, you see it on a bill or receipt. Then you notice it again somewhere online. At this point, you are probably asking yourself, what is going on? The strange part is that the number may have been there before, too. You just probably never paid enough attention to notice it. Once your mind notices a pattern, you naturally become more aware of it. Something that was easy to ignore suddenly stands out. Think about buying a certain car. Before you owned it, you probably saw that same model on the road without giving it much thought. But after you become interested in that car, something changes. Suddenly, you start noticing the same model everywhere you look. The cars did not suddenly appear on every street. They were already there. The difference was that your attention had changed. Numbers can work in exactly the same way. Once a certain number becomes important to you, your mind may start noticing it much faster. But there is another reason repeating numbers can feel important. Sometimes we notice them when something else is already on our mind. Maybe you are thinking about changing something in your life. Maybe you are worried about money, work, family, or a decision you have been avoiding. Then, right in the middle of all those thoughts, you look at the clock and see that same number again. Suddenly, the moment feels different. You may start feeling that the number is connected to whatever you are going through. That is what can make a simple number feel surprisingly personal. You might wonder if the number is trying to tell you something, or if your own mind is simply giving that moment more meaning than it normally would. And that brings us to the real question. Is the number important by itself, or does it feel important because of what is happening inside your life? There is something strange about seeing the same number at the right moment. Imagine you have been thinking about making a big change. You are not sure whether you should move forward or stay where you are. Then, while checking your phone, you notice the same number you have been seeing for days. For a moment, you stop. You may wonder if it means something. That reaction is important because repeating numbers can become connected to our feelings. The number itself may be simple, but the moment in which we notice it can make it feel much more meaningful. This is one reason people become interested in numerology. Instead of looking at numbers as just numbers, numerology gives them a symbolic meaning. A person may look at 1 as a sign of a new beginning, 2 as something connected with balance or relationships, or 7 as a number linked with deeper thinking and learning. Different numerology systems can give numbers different meanings, so there is no single answer that applies to everyone. What matters is how you use the idea. If you keep seeing one number, try not to immediately think that something huge is about to happen. Instead, take a moment and look at your own situation. What were you thinking about just before you noticed the number? Were you feeling excited, worried, hopeful? Were you remembering someone? Were you thinking about a decision you need to make? Those small details can tell you a lot about why the number feels important to you. You can even try something very simple. The next time you see the number, write down where you saw it and what was happening at that moment. Do this for a few days. You may start to notice that the number appears most often when you are thinking about a certain subject. Or you may discover something even simpler. You are just noticing it more because you have been looking for it. And honestly, both possibilities are interesting. You do not have to decide that every repeating number is a sign. You also do not have to completely ignore it. You can simply use it as a small reminder to stop and pay attention to your own thoughts. Sometimes life moves so quickly that we do not give ourselves even a few seconds to ask what we are actually feeling. A repeating number can become that little pause. The longer you notice a repeating number, the easier it is to start looking for an answer. You may search its meaning online, watch videos about it, or compare it with different numerology meanings. Before long, a simple number on your phone can feel like it has a much bigger story behind it. But there is something worth remembering. A number should not make your decisions for you. If you keep seeing 1111, 222, 333, 777, or another number, you can be curious about it. You can learn what numerology says about that number. You can think about why it caught your attention. But your job, your relationships, your money, and your future should not depend on a number appearing on a clock. The more useful way to look at repeating numbers is as a chance to pause. Maybe you have been ignoring something you need to deal with. Maybe you have been thinking about a change but have not admitted it to yourself. Maybe you simply need a moment to slow down after a busy day. When that familiar number appears, instead of immediately asking, "What is going to happen?" try asking, "What is happening in my life right now?" That question can take you somewhere much more useful. And if the number suddenly stops appearing, there is no reason to panic. Nothing bad has to happen just because you stop seeing it. Your attention changes, your routines change, your surroundings change. Even the way you look at things can change. Maybe the number was never meant to predict your future in the first place. Maybe it simply made you notice something you had been overlooking. So the next time you see the same number again, don't rush past it, but don't be afraid of it either. Take a breath. Look at the moment. Remember what was on your mind. Notice how you feel. Then carry on with your day. Because sometimes the most interesting part of a repeating number is not the number itself. It is the moment when it makes you stop, look around, and realize what has been happening inside your own life.